Good morning, Bleh. Oh, what was that? Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Shift. If you're new, we're so honored you'd spend your morning with us. You can scan this QR code or head back to the welcome table, fill out the Connect card, and we'll send you a Starbucks gift card. And if you're at the welcome table, make sure you check out some of our free Shift stuff. Dinner groups start in May. You'll be meeting once a month throughout the summer, and the whole point is just to hang out, meet new people, and make new friends. To sign up, you can scan this QR code or the one at the welcome table, scroll down the digital page until you see sign up. Easy peasy. Our last after shift is today, and it's brunch. I don't know if you can smell all the goodness back there, but it's gonna be amazing. Even if you didn't bring anything, we'd love it if you'd stay. We're just gonna be hanging out back together and having some fun. It's not like you're not gonna go eat anyways, so you might as well just stay and eat with us. Just saying. That's all the announcements that we have for this week. Make sure you're following us on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok. Now let's jump into our new series, Jesus and.
Good morning, you guys. I've said it before, and it doesn't look like I'm going to stop saying it anytime soon, but the last few years have really sucked. Just with all of the constant turmoil, things like COVID and everything that's going on. In our family, we're blessed, far more blessed than most. We got COVID, but we didn't experience any loss of jobs. We didn't lose anybody. But with just everything that's going on, there's this just constant stress. My daughter did lose something, though. She lost her senior year. She was supposed to graduate in 2020, and the school closed down during spring break or a week before spring break, and so at first it just felt like a longer spring break, and they got 2 weeks spring break and all that stuff, and I just said spring break like 16 times in 30 seconds. Did you notice that? I did. Anyway, but I can't forget the moment that she realized that her senior year was gone. Her work had shut down, and it was then that she understood that things weren't going to be the same again, right? And there was a real grieving process, this real grief and mourning that happened, and we had to give her space to do that. Like I said, we've been blessed more than most, and one of the things that I've come to understand is that we don't do sad well. We don't do grief well. We don't mourn well. We don't give space for that. And I don't know if that's just the church or Americans in general, that we don't like to do that. Like last week we celebrated the pinnacle of Christian faith, right? The resurrection. And it was a celebration. All across the country, even across the world, churches just like this are typically full, but on Good Friday, not so much. And we were a part of that. We didn't even offer a Good Friday service, basically because it's just not part of our rhythm, right? We just don't do mourning very well. This week, we're starting a series of talks that we've just called Jesus and today we're looking at Jesus and our grief. And we're going to see a story that's recorded in Luke's account of Jesus' life. And it's something that happens directly after the resurrection of Jesus. And we're going to meet two people. We're going to meet two of his disciples. One is named Cleopas. The other one is not named. Our best guess, or at least my best guess, is it's his wife, Mary. She's named in the book of John as one of the Marys at the cross that didn't abandon him like the other guys did. Just a side note. So if it's her, they're walking along this road to a town called Emmaus, all right? And as they're walking along, they're having this discussion. In this discussion, the Greek infers that it's a heated discussion, all right? Now, not knowing for sure if it's her at the cross, but if it is, and we're just going to assume it is for the sake of argument going forward, what she just witnessed was the torture of somebody she loved to their death, right? It was a public execution. Not only that, but take all of the hopes and dreams and expectations that they had placed on this man Jesus, and then all of it, all of a sudden, violently taken away. I can't imagine the amount of emotional turmoil and trauma that not only her being there, but all of Jesus' disciples would have been feeling. I don't think it's a stretch at all to say that they would be experiencing PTSD after what they just witnessed, right? And then comes along Jesus. He comes strolling up, and he asks them, what are they doing? What are they talking about? And they're like, what do you mean what we're talking about? The only thing that happened just... And he's like, what are you talking about? What happened? And they're just kind of taken aback that he has no idea, like, what rock are you living under? That's basically what they ask. Now, in Luke 24, I'm not going to read through all of it, but you should. It says that they don't recognize Jesus, and it specifically says that God kept them from recognizing Jesus. Now, it doesn't say why, all right? And it doesn't say how. And I might be reading a little bit into the story. I'm going to do that a few times this morning. I don't think it's a stretch, though. I do believe that one of the reasons that maybe God kept them from recognizing who Jesus was out of kindness. And I say that because think back to a moment in your life where you've had some sort of traumatic experience that caused grief or mourning, all right? Now, I don't need you to raise your hand, but how many of you have had even good-intentioned people of faith come at you, because that's how it would feel, come to you with Christianese or some sort of bumper sticker theology, like God can handle it, or it's all part of God's plan, or just have faith, or just whatever it is. Now, how loving did that feel? And I think the question that that I would want to ask is, how much did I want to punch them? How much did I want to throat punch them when they said that to me, right? And I think it's because I think that God kept them from recognizing Jesus out of kindness because they needed space to mourn. And too often, even good-intentioned followers of Jesus will come at somebody that needs a space for mourning and try to take that space, as if there's not room for grief in God. And when we say things like, it's all part of God's plan, or just have more faith, or maybe just pray, or whatever, fill in the blank, when we do that, we subtly, and sometimes not so subtly, take permission, take it away from them, take away their ability to mourn and to grieve. We're stealing their permission. We're communicating that in God, like God is with you, so why would you be sad about this thing, right? And I think that Jesus gave them space to process through those emotions that they were having. So if that's something that, and I'm guilty of that, I'll just say that. I'm guilty of having done that in the past, all right? But I will say this, just stop. Don't do that anymore. If somebody comes to you in a moment of grief or mourning, then allow them that space. Be ready to sit in it with them. Just sit in silence. Just sit there with them. Cry with them. Rage with them. Curse with them. Whatever they need, but allow them to have that space to mourn and don't take it from them. And so I think that what Jesus did there and is getting ready to do is deeply moving and very beautiful. So first he gives them that space to grieve. And then they start walking, right? They're on this walk, and Jesus says this to them, and we'll read it for you. It's in Luke chapter 24. And it says this, "Then Jesus said to them, 'You foolish people.'" Now, that sounds really harsh in the English language, but if you go back in the Greek, I think it's much softer. Okay? Basically, it's the idea that you're not understanding. Why don't you understand? Or you're just not understanding me. So it sounds really harsh. It's not like Jesus is like, they're crying and like, "Shut up, big boys don't cry." You know what I mean? It's nothing like that. It's just like, you're not quite understanding this. You find it so hard to believe all that the prophets wrote in the scriptures. Wasn't it clearly predicted that the Messiah would have to suffer all these things before entering his glory? Go ahead and go to the next one. "Then Jesus took them through the writings of Moses and all the prophets, explaining from all the scriptures the things concerning himself." Now, they're walking along this road, all right? Now, from where they are to where they're going is a 7-mile walk. Easily done in a few hours if you're, like, going at it, right? Like if you're speed walking, doing the whole thing. You can easily get it done. But I'm not picturing that's what's happening here, okay? Every evening, I take our dog for a walk. And I listen to podcasts, or I listen to Audible, listen to books. And we just kind of take this meandering, it's like a 2.5 hour, 2.5 mile walk. Good grief. No. I love my dog, but not that much. It's a 2 to 2.5 mile walk, all right? And it usually takes us about an hour because he has to smell everything. And then he has to pee on even more. Like, even when there's nothing left. I'm just like, he walks up there like he hikes up, and I'm like, dude, you have nothing left. You are not that big a dog. He's a little tiny dog, all right? But he just, I don't know why, and it takes us forever to do that. And I picture that kind of meandering walk right now. That Jesus is very much taking his time on this 7-mile journey and walking them through all of these things that they need. He's giving them the time that they need to walk through all of this. This year is the 10-year anniversary of one of the most difficult months of my entire life. It was November. It was November 1st. And that year, Halloween, it was either on a Sunday or it was during the week. And my wife and I had stepped out of a very toxic church, and so I was working just a regular 9-to-5 job. And I was dropping my son off at the daycare. He was a little guy, and I got a text message from my best friend's wife telling me to call his phone. And it was like 8 in the morning, so it was a little weird. And I was like, okay. So I shot him a text message before I actually called him. He was a youth pastor in a neighboring town, and we were very close. I loved him like a brother. And so I shot him a message and was just like, dude, did you get me a job working with you? Because we'd wanted to do that. And it just said, just call me. And so I called, and on the other line, I practiced this, and I didn't do this. Sorry. And on the line, Will didn't answer. His name was Will. But his senior pastor did. And they were telling me that early that morning, that at the age of 34, Will had died of a massive heart attack. A heart defect that nobody knew about. And his wife found him early that morning after having gone trick-or-treating with their 4 little ones. And I hung up the phone. I don't remember what I said. I don't remember the conversation at all. I just know how I felt. And I screamed. And I punched my steering wheel over and over because I just didn't know what else to do. And I hated God in that moment. I'm just going to be really honest. I did. And there's just no reason. 10 years later, there's still no reason. And then I had to go about my day. And it was incredibly difficult. And then just a few days later, as I was doing the inspection job, I was working an inspection job, and I was driving from one to the next, and I got another phone call. And this time it was from my dad. And it was a phone call to tell me that my grandmother had suddenly passed away. And so I just pulled over. And I didn't have anything left. I mean, I was just soul weary, right? I was just numb. And during that time, had somebody come at me with some of those things, I don't know what I would have said to them. Because I needed time to sit, right? Not only did I need the space, I needed the time to sit in that, to be allowed to be in that moment without somebody trying to take it from me. And I think that's exactly what Jesus is doing on the 7-mile walk. And he's walking them through these things because that's what they needed at that moment, right? They were trying to figure out the chasm of what was supposed to happen, of this thing over here. This is what should have been, and then life showed up, and then all of a sudden it's over here. And they're trying to figure out how to get from this point, what should have been, like they were expecting Jesus to do this one thing, and he was going to be this thing, and that's what everybody thought. And then all of a sudden, something radically different happened, and now life is over here, and they're trying to go from here to here, and they're not sure what to do, and Jesus helps them do that. And there's nothing wrong with us sitting in that for a season, and however long that season is. Like, there are moments in Scripture that we see that happening. I'm not going to read the whole psalm, all right? It's a long one, but you should. Psalm 88. Psalm 88 is titled The Suffering of Affliction. And it's whoever the psalmist is, they're going through something, and they go through this whole lament. This is how the psalm ends, okay? This is how it ends. Just keep that in mind. This is the ending of the psalm. Psalm 88. But I cry to you for help, Lord. In the morning, my prayer comes before you. Why, Lord, do you reject me and hide your face from me? From my youth, I have suffered and been close to death. I have borne your terrors and am in despair. Your wrath has swept over me. Your terrors have destroyed me. All day long, they surround me like a flood. They have completely engulfed me. You have taken from me friend and neighbor. And the last line of the psalm is, darkness is my closest friend. This past week, I actually had a conversation with somebody. I reached out to them. I've actually never met them. It's kind of like a social media friend. We connected on Instagram because of fitness industry. And she started posting some things, just heartbreaking posts. And that psalm came to my mind immediately. And so I just reached out to her, and because she was actually talking about how people were saying things to her like what we just got done saying. Like, just, it's all part of God's plan. And she's experiencing the sudden and shocking death that's to be very close to her. And she didn't want to hear any of it. And so I sent her that Psalm 88 and just reached out to her because she needed to have not only the space, but the time. She didn't want to hear that because she needed to be mad at God. She needed to be able to say what she needed to say so that she could move on. Now, she's going to be there for a while, right? Like, there might come a time for the celebration of other things, right? Like, of the feel-good verses and the praise and all of that stuff. But that happens only in the timing and with the permission of the person grieving. And people were trying to take that from her. Not only were they trying to take her space, they were trying to take her time that she needed to sit in Psalm 88. And it's okay to sit in Psalm 88. And we've all been there. It doesn't even have to be the death of somebody. It can be the death of something. And we've all experienced that. Like, we thought life was going to be one way. I mean, how many churches rolling into 2020 had 2020 vision, right? For like their year theme, like, God's got us. Uh-oh. Well, 2020 is hindsight, isn't it? Or hindsight is 2020. And the writer of Psalm 88 blames God for all of this. And it's okay to sit in Psalm 88 for as long as you need to. But then Jesus does something else. Like, that's not the end of the story. Like, if that were the end of the story, that's saying that death has the final word. Right? And we just celebrated that last week, that death no longer has the final word. That's what resurrection means, that death is no longer the finality. Right? And if we just stayed in Psalm 88, that's saying that death has the final word, whether it's the death of a loved one or it's the death of something we thought would be or should be. And then I think Jesus does something else here. He gives them perspective. And in Luke 24, it's not the end of the story, so this is what it says. By this time, they were nearing Emmaus and the end of their journey. Jesus acted as if he were going on, but they begged him, stay the night with us, since it's getting late. So he went home with them, and as they sat down to eat, he took the bread and blessed it. Then he broke it and gave it to them. Suddenly their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and at that moment he disappeared. Now, before we move on, let's just recognize that that's really weird. Can we? That's just super weird, okay? I'm just, okay, he's Jesus, he's creator. If he wants to disappear, he can. Okay, so like we're just going to own it and then just keep moving, right? But I think what he does here is he gives them something besides Psalm 88, right? And when did it happen? I think it's significant that this moment didn't happen until they were doing what? They were sitting around a table together. In the first century, and even now, in the first century, in the Middle East, if a rabbi sat at a table with you, it was more than just a meal. It meant that we were in good relationship, that I'm good with you, that you're good with me, that it's kinship, it's oneness, right? And it was only then that perspective happened. And I think that, again, I might be reading into this just a little bit, but I think that healing, that going from Psalm 8, that moving on from Psalm 88 happens within relationships. Like, I think it's the people that are around us that speak the things that Jesus spoke into them. And I think the wisdom that we can take from this story this morning is that God still does the same things today that he did through Jesus then. It's just that he does them through us now. Like, if we're following the way of Jesus, and we're following Jesus or his way, then that's what we do, right? That's good fruit. We talk about that all the time, that we're bringing that good fruit to others. And Jesus gave them the time that they needed, right? He gave them the space that they needed to mourn. He gave them permission. And then he gave them the time that they needed to process what they were going through. And then he gave them perspective. Now, this story happens all within just a singular day, right? Our stories don't happen like that. Like, we want the sitcom, right, where you've got 22 minutes of something, and then the last 3 minutes it's wrapped up in a nice, neat bow, commercial break, right? But that's not reality. That's not reality at all. It's going to take time, and however long it takes, I think is okay. As long as you don't stay in Psalm 88, if I may be so bold. If you go in the Psalms, and you read Psalm 88, immediately after Psalm 88, you go from the last line being, darkness is my closest friend, to Psalm 89, verse 1 and 2, which says, I will sing of the Lord's great love forever. With my mouth I will make your faithfulness known through all the generations. I would declare that your love stands firm forever, and that you have established your faithfulness in heaven itself. Resurrection means that death doesn't have the last word, that Psalm 88 is not the last word, that Psalm 89 can be the next word. And I think that we have to give ourselves permission to be in Psalm 88, but understanding that one day, hopefully, prayerfully, that Psalm 89 will come. Like, I am not Will's wife. I will never understand what she went through. We talked hours and hours. And I'll never understand what it was like to have to walk into her shoes, right? But she went through her process, and she remarried. She married a really good man. They celebrate Will every birthday, every anniversary. He celebrates Will with her. And they have Psalm 89 now. Now, her story is not everybody's story, and Psalm 88 takes a whole lot longer for others, but I can't help but just encourage us to say, but Psalm 89, if it's not here yet, it's coming. And so as we end today, I want to offer just a couple of closing thoughts before we gather around the symbolic table of Jesus and then actually share a meal together. And the first is this, is that if you're grieving today, whether it's actual death or the loss of something in life, I want you to know that we're with you. That you're seen and that you're loved. We see your pain, we see your anger, and that we will sit with you in that as long as you need us to, and as long as you invite us into that space. The second thing is that when you're ready, we will help you with perspective and healing, not with cliche Christianese, but with love